scheduled this to begin in 5 minutes. I did everything right. I clicked all the right buttons. And it went live right away. That's okay. Not the end of the world. Guys, it's time to say goodbye to Clearwater. Time to say goodbye to Clearwater, Florida. It's time to be realistic. Scientology is about to finally get its way and win its battle with the city of Clearwater, Florida. It's one thing to be optimistic. It's another thing to also have to be realistic. Hi, everybody. Thank you. I can see people joining the live chat. There doesn't seem to be anything that the citizens of Clearwater, people who understand Scientology better than the city council members could ever hope to, there doesn't seem to be anything any of these people can do, myself included, to get the city council members to understand what it is that they're dealing with. And maybe I'm giving them too much credit to even imply that the problem is there's nothing can be said to get them to understand, because I truly believe they do understand. I believe they're being influenced in other ways. Good morning, everybody. But I wanted to jump on here and talk about some of the elements involved a little bit more. I've been thinking about this morning, and I just, even though I'm saying I feel like the council members are being influenced in ways behind the scenes, whether it's financially, whether it's other means that basically excludes logic from the equation, I still cannot help but want to continue to explain things, because it's hard for me to accept that explanations don't matter. I want to start with the idea that council members Michael Menino and Ryan Cotton and David Albritton seem to think that David Miscavige and Scientology actually want to develop downtown Clearwater for its own members. And I want to point something out. When you talk about downtown development, you're talking about things that usually bring people downtown to spend money. You're talking about entertainment venues. You're talking about food and drink establishments. And I want to point out to the council members something that they must already know. Scientology already has its own restaurants inside its own buildings. Those restaurants are staffed by Scientology Sea Org slaves who get paid $50 a week. Scientology's own restaurants are staffed by people who don't get paid and don't need to be paid. They also are not service employees. They are so-called lifetime religious volunteers. The relevance that has to this conversation is you are not allowed to tip them. Okay, so why would David Miscavige want to put any restaurants in downtown Clearwater when his own restaurants inside his own buildings already make money for him, and it's cheaper to eat in David Miscavige's restaurants that are staffed by Sea Org members, especially when you consider you don't tip? So and to be honest, the food in these restaurants is high quality. So you're already getting a high quality meal with the highest quality service for the lowest possible price, and you're not only don't you tip, you're not allowed to tip. A Sea Org member is not allowed to accept a tip. So David Miscavige is already making money off of the restaurants that are in his own buildings. Scientologists like eating there because it's very good food for very low price, excellent service, and no tip. Why would David Miscavige want or have any interest whatsoever in bringing restaurants to downtown, opening restaurants in downtown, having Scientologists open restaurants in downtown? It doesn't even make any sense. Another one of these examples of David Miscavige's financial disincentive to develop downtown. In the world of Scientology, people who come to Clearwater, Florida to do Scientology at the Flagland base are expected to stay in properties that are owned and controlled and run by Scientology. This is so true that even Scientologists, some flies around here, even Scientologists that have seen a real estate opportunity or a rental opportunity, you know, very entrepreneurial Scientologists who's like, you know how I could make a few bucks? I could get some rental properties in downtown Clearwater or near downtown Clearwater, and I could rent them out to all the Scientologists who go to Clearwater but would rather not spend top dollar staying at one of these Scientology hotels. By the way, the hotels are rather expensive. Not Clearwater Beach expensive, but they're expensive for Clearwater. A Scientologist caught renting properties to out-of-town Scientologists and thereby competing with David Miscavige and Scientology for those, I want to say birthing dollars, but birthing is a word SEERG members use. What's accommodations? Competing for those accommodations dollars. That will get a Scientologist into a lot of trouble. You are basically taking money out of David Miscavige's pocket by doing that. That's how David Miscavige sees it. A lot of Scientologists have gotten in a lot of trouble over the last 30 years. When David Miscavige decides you are making money off of the back of Scientology, money that should be going to Scientology. Okay, so what's my point here? The Clearwater City Council members, from their words, if you can take their words at face value, oh, this fly is going to drive me crazy. The Clearwater City Council members seem to think that if they give Scientology everything Scientology is demanding, which is a whole bunch more property in downtown Clearwater. For anyone new to the stream, Scientology is actually trying to buy a street. They're actually in the middle of convincing the city of Clearwater to sell them a street so that they can close the street down for their own private use. These council members seem to think that if Scientology can just be given what they want, Scientology will basically redevelop the entirety of downtown Clearwater on their own dime, and this will attract tons and tons and tons of new Scientologists to downtown Clearwater. Guys, if it seems like there's a whole bunch of trolls in the live chat, it's okay. It's because we're doing vertical live stream and we get tons and tons of new viewers. Yes, I am bald. Okay. So the Clearwater City Council members seem to think that somehow giving Scientology what they want, so that Scientology will follow through on their promise to redevelop downtown Clearwater, will attract tons of new Scientologists to Clearwater, Florida, and that will be good for Clearwater economically, developmentally, and otherwise. This is totally false. And that's why I explained the whole Scientologists not being allowed to compete with Scientology for accommodations dollars thing. Because if the Clearwater City Council members truly understood that every Scientologist that comes to Clearwater is supposed to stay at one of the Scientology-owned hotels, and that the only exceptions to this is if that the person coming from out of town already owns their own property in Clearwater or locally. They can obviously stay at their own property. If the Clearwater City Council truly understood this, all they would have to do is look at the visible occupancy rates of the Scientology-owned hotels to see that they're usually like 10, 15 to 20% occupied. All of the Scientologists who are ever going to come to Clearwater are already coming to Clearwater. The fact that these council members are so uneducated, again, I know they're not so uneducated, so I'm saying this even though I realize it's not entirely true. These council members know better. Their behavior directly contradicts the knowledge that I already know they have. I know that they understand these things, which is why I refuse to believe there isn't some sort of a behind-the-scenes other type of influence going on. These council members really seem to think that if Scientology builds L. Ron Hubbard Hall, which is just an event hall that Scientology wants to build in downtown Clearwater, it will be a boom. It will result in a boom for downtown Clearwater. In order to believe that, you would have to not understand the role of the Flag Land Base in the world of Scientology. And the Flag Land Base in downtown Clearwater, Florida, is the highest level Scientology organization in the world. It is, the truth is that their cruise ship is technically as high or slightly higher of a level of an organization, but their cruise ship is tiny and almost no Scientology gets done there. The Flagland Base is the only Scientology organization that David Miscavige personally oversees. I would say he personally runs it because nominally that, realistically that is true, but there are a lot of other executives responsible for the so-called running of the Flagland Base. But those executives answer directly to David Miscavige, and that's not true for any other organization. It's also the, and for that reason, it is the one organization in the world that David Miscavige has to make sure the stats are actually going up. The way David Miscavige makes sure that the stats of the Flagland Base in downtown Clearwater are constantly going up is he is also constantly figuring out how to cannibalize business from the lower level Scientology organizations. And he does that in many ways. And this is not a new thing. This has always been true. And this is why, the statements that the city council members make and their actions and their decisions would tend to indicate they don't understand a thing about Scientology, because this has always been true. The Flagland Base has a group of Sea Org members that it has constantly touring the world. It's called the Flag World Tour. And I think there might even be more than one Flag World Tour, or more than one Flag World Tour team. Usually when the wind is blowing out here, there aren't any flying critters to bug me. Oh, I didn't turn the fan on. Hold on, guys. Let me turn the fan on. Hold on. Jackpot! That should be a little bit better. Oh, it's loud. I think once it gets going, it's not quite as loud. Okay, we're talking about the Flag World Tour. The Flagland Base may be the highest level Scientology organization in the world, and it may be the only organization in the world where you can do Scientology's operating Thetan level 7. It's the only org in the world. The Flagland Base, and it may also be true, you cannot join Scientology at the Flagland Base. You can't join Scientology in downtown Clearwater. However, if you are an experienced, vetted Scientologist, they know you're not a secret CIA infiltrator, you can do lower level Scientology services at the Flagland Base in Clearwater, Florida. Doing lower level Scientology services is not the same thing as joining Scientology. You can have people who've been in Scientology for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. They're still lower level Scientologists, and they're still doing lower level Scientology services. That's very common. So even though the Flagland Base is the highest level Scientology organization in the world, it's the only place where you can do OT7. You can't join Scientology. You can, as a Scientologist, go to Flag and do the exact same lower level Scientology services that you can do in your local organization. And what David Miscavige does, because this is what L. Ron Hubbard did as well, David Miscavige basically says, sure, you can do your lower level Scientology in your local org if you want, but it may not be done correctly. And when you come to Flag in the future, you might just have to redo all of those services when you get to Flag, because Flag is the mecca of technical perfection. That's the actual phrase Scientology uses to promote Flag. It is the mecca of technical perfection. And the only way to be sure you're ever getting perfect standard Scientology, and the only way to make sure that you're not going to have to just redo those things again later, is just come to Flag and do those services. Sure, it's more expensive, but it's more expensive in the short term. It's actually cheaper in the long term because you're getting it perfect, and it's the best service in the world, and we guarantee it. This is one of the many ways that David Miscavige keeps the Clearwater, Florida, the Flagland Base, booming, hustling, making money, and profitable, even though Scientology is actually shrinking and failing everywhere else in the world. I would argue that Scientology is actually shrinking and failing in Clearwater as well, but it's easier to cover it up because of this cannibalization effect. That if you live in a city, where there is a Scientology organization, and depending on what city you're in, it's either going to be an old, relatively small building, or it's going to be a new, absolutely massive 50,000 plus square foot facility. No matter whether it's an older, smaller building or a bigger, newer building, go inside. You're going to notice it is a ghost town. It is empty. There's nobody there. Even in one of the biggest organizations in the US by square foot, it's Scientology's organization in St. Paul, Minnesota. They literally bought an old science museum and they turned it into a Scientology organization. By square footage, it's one of the biggest Scientology orgs in the world. There's maybe 5 or 10 staff members there. It is vacant. It is absolutely empty. We went there last year and checked it out. It was incredible. These buildings are empty. That is true for every Scientology organization in the world. This is the other thing that the Clearwater City Council members don't truly understand. When they say, oh my God, it's going to bring tons of more Scientologists to Clearwater. There aren't tons of more Scientologists. They don't exist. There's about 20,000 to 30,000 Scientologists on the entire planet. Half of those are in the United States. The number gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And the Scientologists that can already afford to come to Clearwater or have a reason to come to Clearwater are already coming to Clearwater, whether they live here or not. Now, it's funny because Scientology itself publicly claims to have, is it 10,000 or 15,000? I can't remember. Let's go with 10. 10,000 Scientologists living in Clearwater, Florida. They didn't say around Clearwater, Florida. They didn't say in the vicinity within driving distance of Clearwater, Florida. They didn't say Tampa Bay. They didn't say South Florida. They said 10,000 Scientologists living in Clearwater, Florida. All the city council members would have to do, and by the way, all these council members have already admitted publicly that they have recently met in person with David Miscavige, is say, David Miscavige, Mr. Miscavige, sir, where are they? If there's 10,000 Scientologists living here in Clearwater, Florida, where are they? Why don't we see them? Why aren't they in the parks? Why aren't they at the events downtown? Why aren't they even at the events you guys put on downtown? Every now and then, Scientology will close the street in downtown Clearwater and put on what is supposed to be some sort of an event for the public, whether it's a Christmas thing with snowballs and ice skating, or whether it's a Cinco de Mayo party. That's just an example. I don't know if they're actually doing one, or if they actually did one this week. They'll close down the event, sponsored by the Church of Scientology. Nobody will show up to these things. Homeless people show up for the food. Some local families might wander through. It's like, you guys are saying you have all these members here. Where are they? So what does it indicate when you have someone like David Albritton making public statements to the effect of, all this development will be really good for Clearwater because it'll bring tons and tons and tons of new Scientologists to Clearwater, Florida? It shows he doesn't have the first goddamn clue what he's talking about, which is hard to believe for a guy who's lived in Clearwater for a couple generations. Okay, so the reason, the inspiration for doing this live stream was really, David Albritton is one of 3 city council members who has already voted yes to sell this street to Scientology. Scientology only needs 3 votes because there's only 5 city council members, and that includes the mayor. David Albritton, his son-in-law, Ryan Cotton. Yes, you heard me right. David Albritton is one of the city council members. His son-in-law, Ryan Cotton, is another one of the city council members. Michael Menino is the other 3rd council member who voted yes to sell the street to Scientology. So David Albritton, Ryan Cotton, Michael Menino. The 2 people who voted no is Lena Teixeira and Mayor Bruce Rector. In order to sell a street to Scientology, you can't just vote once, you actually have to vote twice. So the first time this came up for a vote is the first time any of the citizens of Clearwater ever heard anything about this plan. Negotiations had already been ongoing with Scientology in secret for 4 months, and and the meeting where it was brought up for a vote was the first time the council members, the citizens of Clearwater, ever heard anything about this. So the vote went 3-2 to sell the street to Scientology. By the way, guys, in the live chat, people are asking, why is there so much trolling in the live stream? It's because we're doing a YouTube vertical live, and it pushes the stream out to tons and tons and tons of brand new people. That's why. So don't just ignore the trolling. It doesn't matter. That's the internet, folks. Okay. A couple weeks later, the second vote was held. And at that meeting, tons of local people showed up to speak against this project. Not a single person from Scientology showed up to speak in favor of the project. I think that tells you something. A second group submitted a proposal to buy the street that Scientology was trying to buy and to turn it into a walking memorial and a museum to a historically significant black commercial district that existed generations ago on that street in downtown Clearwater, Florida, that's been largely forgotten. David Albritton broke ranks with the other two supporters of this project to vote to postpone the vote by a month so that this second group could have more time to put their proposal together, and so that the second group could at least have a fighting chance. It turns out David Albritton was just performing. He was just performing. I gave him some credit when he did that because, it looked like it was a step in the right direction. At the first vote that was held, the 3 city council members who were in favor of it said that they specifically asked David Miscavige to make his presentation to the public so that the public would understand what was being proposed, what was being promised. And David Miscavige refused to do that. They also asked David Miscavige to put into writing all of the promises and the guarantees he was making that Scientology would do for downtown Clearwater. He also refused to do that. Now, you would think that a sensible elected representative who's elected to represent the best interests of the constituents, the citizens, the residents of Clearwater, Florida, when they asked David Miscavige to put into writing all of the things he was promising and guaranteeing, and he said no, you would think that that would be the point that an elected representative would be like, sorry, buddy, my hands are tied. You expect me to put value in your promises and to make representations to my constituents about your promises, but you won't even put your promises in writing. I was born on a Monday, but not last Monday. Sorry, buddy. We can resume conversations when your tone is a little different. You would think that's what an elected representative would do. Nope. Not David Albritton, not Ryan Cotton, not Michael Menino. They just bent over and said, thank you, sir. May I have another? Okay. Okay. I'm telling you that story about Miscavige refusing to put anything into writing about his commitments to develop and activate and occupy their properties. Because understand that it's Scientology's own properties that they've purchased over the last many years, 5, 10, 15 years. Hundreds of millions of dollars of prime downtown commercial properties that Scientology has purchased and just left vacant. Unrenovated, unimproved, unoccupied, no activation whatsoever. When David Miscavige makes promises to the city of Clearwater for everything that he's going to do, please understand, all he's promising to do is to activate their own properties that they already own. It's unbelievable. And then when the council goes to him and says, would you mind putting some of this stuff in writing? And he goes, no, I won't do that. Yes, I do mind. No, I won't do that. I mean, what are we talking about here? What are we doing? What are these elected representatives doing? What are they thinking? How can anyone take them seriously? Okay, so a week and a half ago, David Albritton put up a Facebook post saying, listen, everyone, I asked Scientology to make their presentation public. They have promised me that they're going to. Therefore, if they don't, I will be voting no at the second vote. I gave David Albritton a lot of props for that, because I was like, hey, man, Miscavige and his people specifically said they weren't going to make this presentation public. The fact that you're giving him an ultimatum and the fact that you're making it public, man, I give you props for that. And I gave him props for that. And I did a video giving him props for that. Well, guys, that's why I'm doing this video now. I'm taking the props back. David Albritton is so firmly in the pocket of Miscavige. His head is so firmly lodged up that tight little ass of Miscavige that I can't give David Albritton his props. David Albritton just 2 or 3 days ago went on a local radio show run by a married couple named Doug Kelly and Kelly Kelly. Now, if my name were Kelly and I was about to marry a guy named Doug Kelly, I would probably not take his last name. But that's me, guys. What do I know? I grew up in a cult. I mean, who am I to question a woman that wants to go through life known as Kelly Kelly? I don't know, guys. I'm not here to judge. Okay, the program is run by Doug Kelly and Kelly Kelly. Now, these are two people who have never failed to promote Scientology and Scientology's agenda at every opportunity. They interview, for every city council race, election, campaign season that happens in Clearwater, Florida, Doug Kelly and Kelly Kelly bring on and interview the candidates who are advocating working with Scientology, treating Scientology fairly, characterizing Scientology's treatment in Clearwater as being unfair. They will interview these people all day long. Doug Kelly and Kelly Kelly will refuse to interview any city council candidates who are critical of Scientology. And Doug Kelly and Kelly Kelly bring on actual Scientology representatives onto their show to promote Scientology propaganda. Well, Doug Kelly and Kelly Kelly and David Albritton, they had a wonderful idea. They said, hey, how about we bring on David Albritton and one of Scientology's notorious Office of Special Affairs representatives, Sarah Heller. And what if we bring them on the program at the same time together to talk about the wonderful plans that David Miscavige has for downtown Clearwater and Scientology, and how amazing of a community partner Scientology is, and how their plans are so generous and kind and benevolent, and how much money Scientology has sunk into the downtown Clearwater community. What if we brought them on at the same time to show that we are actually moving forward with this with a united front? Wouldn't that be amazing? And that is exactly what David Albritton did. He called into the radio program, pre-scheduled, pre-advanced. Sarah Heller was on the show, in person, in studio. And David Albritton just sang her praises and sang Scientology's praises, and just, really left absolutely no question about where David Albritton stands with Scientology. 8 years ago, David Miscavige made this exact same pitch to the Clearwater City Council. He said, if you will just sell us that little lot of land right behind the Fort Harrison Hotel, we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars redeveloping downtown Clearwater for you guys. Isn't that nice of us? Isn't that nice of us? We're even going to bring in Tom Cruise. We're going to partner with Tom Cruise to build a giant movie, theater, entertainment complex right in downtown Clearwater. It's going to be the best. It's going to be the best. And the city council 8 years ago was smart enough to know, downtown Clearwater might be struggling commercially because of Scientology. But you know what would be even worse than that? Is if we had a Disney-style version of downtown Clearwater brought to you by, sponsored by, courtesy of the Church of Scientology. That would be even worse. Having Scientology Town in downtown Clearwater would be even worse than having a downtown that's just eerily quiet and empty. Because at least when people come downtown now and they see how quiet it is and it's empty and there's weird people in uniforms running all around and what's happening, at least now they're not sure what the hell is going on. Like, what's going on here? This feels weird. Has there been an evacuation? Is there is there a hurricane on the way? Like, what is this, a movie set? What's happening? Is everyone on lunch break? But could you imagine the horrible public relations Clearwater, Florida is going to have when what it becomes is downtown Clearwater, brought to you by Scientology? It will guarantee people stay away. It will guarantee people stay away, because Scientology is going to make sure you and everyone know that all of these beautiful buildings, sure, they're empty, but they're beautiful, aren't they? Oh my God, they're beautiful. By the way, did we tell you how much money we spent making this building beautiful? Millions of dollars. And guys, if Scientology hasn't told you how much money they've spent making these buildings beautiful, just ask David Albritton. He'll tell you. Who cares how much money Scientology spends restoring a building back to what it used to look like in 1930 when nobody wants to go into the building? When Scientology doesn't have enough of its own members to keep that, whatever business is in the ground floor of that building, open, to keep that business thriving. And this is just another point that really the council members should understand. I believe they do understand. They're acting like they don't understand. Scientology does not have enough of its own members to create a thriving downtown district. Because if they did, there would already be one. Do you see how that works? Scientologists want to make money just as bad as anyone else wants to make money. And I mean Scientologists, not just the Church of Scientology. A public Scientologist would be just as interested in opening up a business in downtown Clearwater and having it be successful and thriving as anyone else. Even businesses owned by Scientologists go out of business in downtown Clearwater. That is all of the evidence anyone needs to demonstrate Scientology doesn't have the numbers to make everything they're promising happen. They have enough money to spend to follow through on some of the things they've promised to do. But if the council members knew what they were dealing with, or if they weren't being influenced behind the scenes in other ways, financially or God knows how else, they would understand that it just does not matter how much money Scientology spends to put new facades on all of the businesses in downtown, to re-landscape all of the downtown area, to build a movie theater and mall in downtown Clearwater. Who's gonna go in that mall? Who's gonna go in that mall? When everyone knows downtown Clearwater is Scientologyville, who's gonna go there? For some of you who may not be familiar with Clearwater, Florida and its relative position and role in the Tampa Bay area, Clearwater, Florida is surrounded on every side, except the west, because we have the water to the west, by other awesome, vibrant towns and cities. Every one of those has a vibrant, active, busy, bustling downtown core that people love to go to. Whether we're talking about Dunedin or Safety Harbor or St. Petersburg or Tampa or Palm Harbor or Azona, all of these places to the north and the east and the south of downtown Clearwater have downtown areas that people love to go to, shops, restaurants, entertainment, ice cream, cigar bars, parks, dogs, families, restaurants, you name it. The only one that doesn't, Clearwater, Florida. The only reason, Scientology. It's a two-pronged problem. One, Scientology doesn't have enough members to create that sort of a scene. And two, everyone around Clearwater assumes that every business in downtown Clearwater is owned by Scientology or a Scientologist. and that patronizing those businesses will, in some way, shape, or form, eventually put money into the pocket of Scientology. And there is no organization more hated in the Tampa Bay area than Scientology. People would rather stay away from downtown Clearwater completely than run the risk of accidentally putting even one penny into the pocket of Scientology. So it's a two-pronged problem. The fact that people hate Clearwater and don't want to give Scientology any money wouldn't even be a problem if Scientology had enough members to support a thriving downtown district. Scientology is not to Clearwater what Mormonism is to Salt Lake City. Mormonism actually has millions upon millions of members. The Mormon Church has enough members to have its own cities, have its own state, have its own senators and representatives. Scientology can't even get its own city council member. That's how small and hated Scientology is. And that is why it is the death knell to downtown Clearwater to have it basically become downtown Clearwater, brought to you by Scientology and David Miscavige and his family-destroying human trafficking cult. And that is what David Albritton and Ryan Cotton and Michael Menino are doing to Clearwater. They are turning it over to Scientology. David Miscavige has just been waiting to finally have a city council gullible enough, stupid enough, corrupt enough to push his agenda, or to try to convince the people of Clearwater that Clearwater simply has no choice. We have no choice. What can we do? Our hands are tied. We're backed into a corner. The last 50 years hasn't worked. Look at downtown. It's a ghost town. We have to do something different. And the only thing we haven't tried yet is to just give David Miscavige everything he wants. Do you know what David Miscavige doesn't want? A busy, bustling, vibrant, developed downtown Clearwater. How do you know he doesn't want it? Because if that's what he wanted, that's what he would already have. How do the city council members not understand this? All David Miscavige wants is the property you are now promising to give him, the 3 properties at this point. 8 years ago, he was only saying he wanted 1 property. 8 years ago, when David Miscavige made all these big fancy promises to the city of Clearwater, he was promising to do it just in exchange for 1 property. 8 years later, Miscavige wants 3 properties. And if it weren't for David Albritton, Ryan Cotton, and Michael Menino, he wouldn't be able to get them. But he's got his suckers, he's got his inside men, and David Miscavige is going to get what he wants. And that's actually the inspiration for this video. I am going to stop pretending like it is not crystal clear that David Albritton, Ryan Cotton, and Michael Menino are 100% fully prepared to give David Miscavige exactly what he wants in exchange for nothing but empty promises at best, and at worst, downtown Clearwater. Brought to you by, sponsored by Scientology, the most hated, family-destroying, international human trafficking cult in the world. How stupid can you be? How stupid can you be? Now, guys, there on May 10th, which is in 3 days, there is going to be a rally in downtown Clearwater to support the Save the Garden project, which is the competing project to Scientology's plan. And I'm just going to pull up the details so I can share it with anyone who happens to be in the Tampa Bay area and would like to go. May 10th, 10 a.m. Meeting at 520 Cleveland Street in downtown Clearwater. I'm just going to read the post. It says, "Come downtown for the Save the Garden community rally. It will be our last time to gather as a community before the city council votes to sell a street to Scientology. Enjoy music, friends, prayers, and an interesting update. Peacefully walk with us to the project site. We will meet for the rally at 520 Cleveland Street. Free and easy parking available at the Garden Avenue Garage." Yeah, so it's one thing, like I said, to be optimistic and want to support the Save the Garden project, and I do support the Save the Garden project. I support Brooks Gibbs. I support his entire team. I support everybody working on that. But let's not allow our optimism to cloud what is right in front of our faces, which is David Albritton, the only one of the three who had already voted yes, the only one of the three who was sort of threatening to change his vote, going on a goddamn radio station with Scientology OSA operative Sarah Heller and singing the praises of Scientology, Sarah, and David Miscavige, and saying all of these plans are so wonderful, and I believe they're gonna follow through, and this is only a taste of what's to come. Scientology has so many more great plans for downtown Clearwater, and I am fully confident on their ability to execute. And it's like, wow, when did you guys stop representing the people of Clearwater and start representing David Miscavige and Scientology? I stay away from politics on this channel, but when we are talking about local politics and when we're talking about Scientology and we're talking about influence, there are certain things that simply cannot be avoided or ignored. And that is that Scientology has gotten the most influential local Republican lobbyists on its payroll. And I don't say that flippantly. I'm being literal. Whether we're talking about Mary Repper, or whether we're talking about Joe Burdett, or whether we're talking about other people closely affiliated with the Latvalas, you have the wealthiest local Scientologist billionaire donating millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to the local and state Republican political action committees. That PAC money flows directly into the Clearwater City Council elections. And I want to tell you this, Ryan Cotton is the biggest cheerleader of Scientology on the Clearwater City Council right now. David Albritton's son-in-law, Ryan Cotton. When Ryan Cotton ran for council last year, one of his opponents was a local man named Mike Mastrisario. Mike Mastrisario outraised Ryan Cotton in individual donations 2-1. 2-1, 2-1. Ryan Cotton outspent Mike Mastrisario 4-1. 4-1. 4-1. I might have grown up in a cult. I may not be great at math, but I know the difference between 2-1 and then a 4-1 flip. How do you spend 8 times more money than you raised? The answer is simple. The Tampa Bay and Florida State political action committees run by Ryan Cotton's friends who run the Republican Party in Florida. The millions of dollars of donations from Trish Duggan and her ex-husband Bob Duggan are the richest Scientologists. They're the only Scientologist billionaires. Grant Cardone pretends to be a billionaire, but he's not. Trish Duggan's millions upon millions upon millions of dollars of donations to the Republican political action committees, in my opinion, flowed directly into Ryan Cotton's city council campaign, which is what allowed him to outspend Mike Mastrisario 4-1, even though Mike outraised Ryan 2-1. Is it really any surprise, given this information, that Ryan Cotton is running around being Scientology's biggest spokesperson? That's the influence of money. And guys, you can look it up. Mary Repper was the first big local Republican lobbyist that was put on Scientology's payroll as one of their lobbyists. And then Joe Burdett is very personally close with the leaders of the local and the state Republican Party. He's on Scientology's payroll. He's literally on Scientology's payroll. Joe Burdett is Scientology's lobbyist and representative for their L. Ron Hubbard Hall project. The street that Scientology is trying to buy is in front of their L. Ron Hubbard Hall project. They want to turn it into a privately owned street, in my opinion, so that there's no public easement in front of the hall for any protesters to protest during Scientology events. The influence of money in politics is one of the many levers that Scientology has been able to pull to generate a massively outsized influence on the city, on politicians, considering how small Scientology really is. And I think that's one of the reasons people end up being so surprised when they hear how small Scientology really is because they seem to have a lot more influence than an organization of that size should have. It is corrupt, weak-minded people like Ryan Cotton and Michael Menino and David Albritton who give Scientology the influence they have not earned. Scientology is not a benevolent, well-meaning community partner. Scientology is a family-destroying, sex-trafficking, human trafficking, child-abusing cult that's created an insulated society that even prevents its own members from ever reporting another member to law enforcement or the authorities for any reason whatsoever. Scientology has waged war against downtown Clearwater. Scientology tried to frame Gabe Cesaris, a former mayor of Clearwater. Scientology was caught framing Gabe Cesaris in a hit-and-run car accident. Scientology framed a local federal judge, something to do with prostitutes and drugs on a boat. Scientology is the cause of the destruction of downtown Clearwater. And Ryan Cotton and David Albritton and Michael Menino want you, the citizens of Clearwater, to hear them when they say, we don't have a choice anymore. For the sake of everyone's good, we have to give Daddy Miscavige exactly what he's asking for, or the beatings will continue. Don't you see our hands are tied? How could we possibly stand up? How could we possibly stand up? Especially when all this dirty Scientology is money is going to all of our friends. We want some of that money too. How could we possibly do what's right? You couldn't possibly expect that of us. Even Ryan Cotton was like, well, if Miscavige doesn't follow through on all of his promises, you got me. He pulled the wool over my eyes. Yeah, he did pull the wool over your eyes. It's amazing that the people of Clearwater don't have the wool pulled over their eyes. But the 5 people, I should say 3 people, out of the 120,000 citizens of Clearwater, the 3 of the people who sit up in those 5 seats, for some reason, yours are the eyes who the wool has been pulled over. It's funny how that works. It's funny how he's only able to seem to fool the people who are in the elected seats. That's an interesting dynamic, huh? I wonder what it is Miscavige is giving you or doing to you that allows you to be so deceived by things no one else seems to be deceived about. And literally no one from Scientology. Guys, if it's a weird view, it's because I keep leaning towards the camera. I'm looking at the live chat. You guys are going crazy. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. Literally no one from Scientology has ever showed up to any of these meetings to speak in favor of the project. How does that make any sense? Not even one Scientologist has shown up to these meetings to speak in favor of the project. So not only is Ryan and Dave and Mike doing Scientology's bidding, but Scientology's letting them go out there and take the heat on their own. They're not even providing them any air cover whatsoever. So my understanding, guys, is that on May 12th, let me pull up a calendar and see exactly when May 12th is. My understanding is that on Monday, May 12th, there will be a Clearwater City Council work session. A work session is where they just discuss they basically do a dry run of the business that's going to be conducted. God, I feel like I'm getting bit up by something. A dry run of the business that's going to be conducted at the actual City Council meeting on Thursday, May 15th. On Monday, May 12th, my understanding is that Scientology will have a 10-minute window to make a presentation. And even though it's a work session, this is a publicly televised meeting. They'll have a 10-minute window to present their project for the public. And that Brooks Gibbs and the Save the Garden Project will also have a 10-minute window to present their latest, greatest, updated presentation to the public. And that at that work session, some decision will be made about what exactly will be put on the meeting for the Thursday agenda and what will not. Damn it, I got bit by something. It really hurts. So I would encourage as many people local to Clearwater as possible, as many people in the Tampa Bay area as possible, to show up to the rally on Saturday, May 10th at 520 Cleveland Street to show as much support as possible for the Save the Garden Project. And I would also encourage as many people as possible to show up to the City Council work session on Monday morning. I want to say it's 9 a.m., but you guys would have to fact check me on that. And then I would also encourage as many people as possible to show up to the Clearwater City Council meeting that will be at 6 p.m. Thursday, May 15th in the public library in downtown Clearwater. Even though the 3 people who voted yes the first time have already indicated they will be voting yes a second time, I would like to make it as humiliating for them as possible, as embarrassing for them as possible, to put them under as much pressure as possible, to shine the spotlight on them as much as possible. Let's make this as socially painful as possible for these 3 elected officials to give David Miscavige exactly what he wants: to turn Clearwater, Florida into Scientology town, to put a nail in the coffin of downtown Clearwater for David Miscavige's benefit and trying to sell it to the people of Clearwater like it really is what's just best for all of us. It's unfortunately right about time to officially say goodbye to Clearwater, Florida, the downtown sector. And I wish it weren't true. And I hope at the last minute, one of these 3 corrupt officials changes their vote. But if I told you I was optimistic about it, I'd be lying to you. I'm being realistic. There's no reason to trust that any one of these 3 people are going to do what's best for Clearwater. There's no reason. There's no reason to trust that. There's no reason to believe that. There is reason to hope, but there's no reason to actually count on that. So I'm not going to be back in... we are in Puako, Hawaii at the moment. I am not going to be back in Clearwater by the 15th. I think I'd fly back late on the 16th. So I am not going to be able to be at the rally on Saturday. I'm not going to be able to be at the work session on Monday. I'm not going to be able to be at the council meeting on Thursday. But I would very kindly ask that as many people who can make it, please go. Please show up and please, please let your faces be seen and your voices be heard. All right, let's see. That's pretty much all I got to say on this. Let me check the computer real quick. I don't have any way to pull up all of the comments, you guys, because I'm doing this directly from YouTube. I'm not doing it from StreamYard. StreamYard is how you keep track of all the starred comments and the super chats and things like that. Yeah, that's it, guys. Thanks for joining me. I mean, I realize it's kind of a bummer of a stream, but it's like what's happening in Clearwater, Florida, is a bummer. What David Albritton and Ryan Cotton and Michael Mignano are doing is a bummer. You know, the fact that David Miscavige is going to get exactly what he wants is a bummer. I know I've said this in a bunch of videos, and it's something that I don't know the council members understand or believe. The reason David Miscavige doesn't want people in downtown Clearwater is specifically because you can't join Scientology in downtown Clearwater. You can't join Scientology at the Flag Land Base. You can join in Tampa. You can join in Bel Air. You cannot join in Clearwater, Florida. If you could join Scientology in Clearwater, downtown Clearwater, Florida, David Miscavige, the relationship with the city of Clearwater would be exactly the opposite. Nobody would be building Nobody would be working harder to bring people to downtown Clearwater than David Miscavige if you could join Scientology in downtown Clearwater. The way Miscavige and Scientology thinks and operates is if they can't actually extract any value from you, then you're just a liability. If they can't get your time and your money, they just want to keep you away. Because if you don't have anything positive to offer, you can only bring something negative. You're either going to bring nothing or it's going to be negative. So if they can't get anything from you, they do not want you around. Also realize that Miscavige is, the chat's going crazy. That I said the Flag Land Base is the only organization that Miscavige personally runs and oversees. That means Miscavige spends, of all the organizations in Scientology, Miscavige spends more time at the Flag Land Base, easily, hands down, by exponentially more time at the Flag Land Base in downtown Clearwater than he does anywhere else in the world. That's a security risk for David Miscavige. Having non-Scientologists around the base is a security risk to David Miscavige. The fact that the world all collectively asks, where's Shelley? Where's your wife? Where's Shelley Miscavige? That's a security risk to David Miscavige. And that's why, one of the reasons that Scientology spends so much money buying so much property around the Flag Land Base isn't because they actually are trying to expand or want to expand or have any interest in even expanding that base. I think Miscavige knows there's no point in expanding. He buys all the property to create a buffer zone that they can control to keep people away from the core of the base. That is why Miscavige wants this street. That is why Miscavige wants the old abandoned firehouse next to the Superpower building. That is why Miscavige wants the old Clearwater Marine Aquarium lot behind the Fort Harrison Hotel, is because Miscavige's worst case scenario for him is that a non-Scientology entity gains control of these properties, builds something on that property that attracts non-Scientologists, and all of a sudden, you've got a whole bunch of non-Scientologists next to the Flag Land Base. The exact opposite of anything David Miscavige wants. What do you think, guys? Do the council members not know and understand these things? Or do they know and it doesn't matter because they're being influenced by Scientology's money one way or another? I know what I think the answer is. Because I already have personally shared all of this information with 4 of the 5 city council members. Ryan Cotton is the only council member that I don't actually know in real life. I've lived in Clearwater for 20 years now. I know Lena Teixeira, I know Michael Menino, I know Bruce Rector, and I know David Albritton. And I've already shared all of this info with all of them. And they all know that I know what I'm talking about. And I'm not the only person who's shared this information with them. Mark Bunker has shared all of this information with them. Oh, and also remember earlier when I said Scientology can't even manage to get its own city council member? This is the other thing, guys. It drives me absolutely crazy. Clearwater, Florida gets this reputation for being a city owned and controlled by Scientology. And yet Scientology is so small and so hated in this community, a Scientologist has never once been elected to the Clearwater City Council. And yet an anti-Scientologist, Mark Bunker, was able to be elected to the city council. Remember when I said Scientology claims to have 10,000 members living in Clearwater? Guys, you can win a city council seat with 6,000 votes easily. If Scientology actually had that many people in Clearwater, they'd have a city council member. Not only has a Scientologist never been elected to Clearwater City Council, a Scientologist has never even attempted to run. Because if they did, they're not allowed to run. Miscavige doesn't let Scientologists run for city council, because if they did, it would expose the charade, the facade, the smoke and mirrors, the lies that Scientology tells about how many of its own members live in Clearwater, Florida. As long as they don't even try to get someone elected, they can continue to lie about how many votes they control. It's incredible. It's incredible that the elected officials can't see through this, or to be more accurate, it's incredible that the city officials are aware of all this and they don't care. They're going to sell the citizens of Clearwater. They're going to sell us down the drain. They're going to give Miscavige whatever he wants because they are now doing Miscavige's job for him. All right, guys. I didn't think I'd go for a whole hour, but it looks like we have. Thanks to all the people who are tuning in, and I'll talk to you guys soon.